I've said that there are a lot of arguments in favour of free trade. Yeah? So sometimes you'll be asked to kind of discuss the extent to which free trade is a good idea. Yeah? And one way of doing that is to kind of say, well, why is it that countries decide to protect? And there are lots of ways in which we can do that, which I'll talk about in the next video. But protectionism essentially means restricting imports in some way, shape or form. So why might I want to do that? And we can say there are a whole variety of reasons, but if we try and categorise them. One, the standard argument is to protect key sectors. So what you try and do is to stop those sectors from being wiped out. And everybody kind of wants to do that. So therefore the danger is that everybody protects, and then we lose all the gains from trade. But sometimes countries will cite, that will give particular reasons, that they believe that protectionism is a valid thing to do. So sometimes they'll say there are strategic sectors within their economy, that sometimes these are necessary for defence or they're necessary for other sectors. Where they're saying these strategic sectors are so important that I don't want them to be wiped out. The US often claims steel, for example, as an important strategic sector for the military. There are some sectors where you're saying, well, actually, maybe in the future, I could have comparative advantage in this area. These are new baby industries that don't yet have economies of scale. So if you remember the kind of economies of scale stuff, we're saying that established firms are maybe operating down here at SRAC, SRAC 2, 1, whatever 2. Whereas your industry is still only very small and therefore it can't compete. The cost structure of the small infant industry is simply not able to compete with established firms. So if you want to develop new areas like solar panels or something, maybe you need to protect that sector in the short term. Or maybe there are cultural reasons. I'm standing here in a French classroom. The French, they have l'exception culturelle, where it's kind of the music industry is protected. A certain percentage of songs on French radio have to be in French language. There's similar restrictions on films, on movies. So there are reasons that there are certain key sectors that you might want to protect. Secondly, you might say that sometimes competition is unfair. So what you try and do is you try and stop countries from competing unfairly with companies in your country and putting them out of business. So unfair competition might take the form of dumping. So sometimes, so the Americans have been accused of doing this with powdered milk. What you're doing is you're selling below cost on an overseas market. Often that might be a short-term strategy to build market share, wipe out local firms so that your firms then end up dominating the market. You can see why firms might want to stop that. Or perhaps it's to do with standards. Perhaps it's to do with the idea that maybe kind of labour laws or environmental standards in some other countries aren't at the same level that they are in yours. And you're saying, well, if I make my companies have good labour laws and respect the environment, they're not going to be able to compete. Therefore, I need to stop imports in these sectors. In some cases, you might say that there's a risk of over specialisation. So free trade says you should specialise in what you're best at. Well, that's all great, but what that means is that there is a risk of dependency on for kind of key raw materials or energy or something. So if you totally specialise, then you might say, well, that's great. It's very efficient for the world. Everybody benefits. But if push comes to shove, I may be put into a difficult position. If somebody decides to withhold supplies. So that can be so. On the one hand, you become dependent on others, or if you have a narrow range of products, especially if they're primary products, then if the world price was to drop, or global trends suddenly turn against you, there is a risk of a major shock to the economy because you're not diversified. So what you might say is that what I'm going to do is I'm going to protect to make sure that my economy is sufficiently diversified, to withstand global shocks. If the only thing you produce is oil, and then there's a big collapse, big reduction in oil prices, then potentially you're in trouble. So those are three, and there's a couple of others that I often talk about. One is talking about kind of just general macroeconomic arguments. Now some of these are debatable in terms of their merit. But if you look at kind of macro arguments, what you can say is that sometimes countries will say, I want to decrease unemployment. And that's an argument that's often made kind of during recession. I mean, the problem is that if I protect against you, then you protect against me, and all the gains from trade are then lost. So it doesn't necessarily actually save any jobs. The same argument is to decrease imports, to decrease a current account deficit. Again, that's all very well, but if I do it to you, you'll probably do it to me. So again, maybe there will be no meaningful growth. And obviously imports, are a withdrawal from the circular flow of income. So if we decrease withdrawals, then this may help, to increase GDP because there are fewer imports. And I have to buy from local firms. But the main issue with this is there's going to be, if I protect against you, you're going to protect against me. Therefore there's going to be, there's going to be retaliation. And a final argument is for some low-income economies, it's a source of tax revenue. In the UK, the income that the government gets from tariffs isn't that significant, but it's if you look at the statistics, in some low-income countries, it can be a third of the government's revenue actually comes from taxing imported products. So protectionism is actually a genuinely valuable source of income for some countries, especially low-income countries that don't necessarily have a big industrial base or a big economic base that they can normally tax. So whilst we said that free trade is a good thing, and there are arguments that suggest that total free trade might not be beneficial for everybody.